Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back, guys. I got a great guest. As you can see, I'm here with Dottie the Psychic. Dottie, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Hello, my dotlings.
Dottie, in case people haven't heard your shows before, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about Dottie the Psychic.
Well, oh Lord, I always trip up on this. I don't know why, but I'm bad at introducing myself. I'm Dottie the Psychic. I do YouTube videos. I do personal readings. I do doing a lot online now with, everything going on. You can reach me like online, do Zoom calls and stuff like that. Big thing I'm doing is my YouTube channel. Like, that's my baby. It's where
it's going well, right? It's going real well.
Yeah, if for a small, it's still a little channel, but honestly, I'm treating it like it's a big thing, and someday it will be.
Yep.
I've got some high art on there. Like, I did a whole video just on the art of tea leaf reading.
Cool. My great grandmother used to do that.
That's one of those things like this. It was one of the more socially acceptable forms of divination. People would, because I was listening audiobook, because I do a lot of audiobook. And there's a video on YouTube. If you go to my video, it's in the description because I can't remember where it is right now. But it's basically, it was a book that was written in like the 1800s on all the socially acceptable rules regarding how to read tea leaves. Like, they're not allowed to have any silver cross palms. You're not allowed to, charge for it because that's taboo. About like the length, how long it lasts, how long a period it lasts. And I did the whole video. I used that as a big resource. And a couple of other things. And I did the whole video with like the Alice in Wonderland kind of theme. Like, I got one of my buddies talked in. I actually got a couple of buddies talked into playing characters. So we had I was Alice, and then my roommate Cindy is the Mad Hatter, and Asen, who's really helped me with this channel. He helped me go from being, doing this as a hobby to making it my life's work.
Yeah.
But he gets to play the hare, which I used like a little stuffed Easter rabbit to do.
That's cool. That's totally cool. And Psychic Dottie, can you tell me, are you taking new clients right now with everything? Because I know you can help people virtually. I know that's a huge thing.
I absolutely am. I am actually really, here's the thing, like in my dream, somewhere in the hopefully not so vague or distant future, I would like to do nothing but private clients. So I am absolutely taking new clients. Honestly, it would be great because I do get a few here and there, but that's my business. That's what I want to do.
Of course. And so you're in West Virginia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like we just said, virtually, you can get on the Zoom just like we're doing now, and you can do readings and you can help people. Who's a good candidate to work with Psychic Dottie?
Honestly, here's the funny thing. Like, pretty much anybody who's willing to talk to a psychic. I mean, I've talked to skeptics. I've talked to people who are thinking about getting divorces. A lot of people call me when they are getting ready to make a big life change and they just need somebody else, another adult to speak to. That's a big thing because a lot of my job as a psychic, yes, it is tapping into the divine and coming up with these answers, but you're also talking to another human being about some pretty intense situations. I get called about a lot of things. So
big things, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're just intrigued, if you just want to see what I can do, give me a call. If you've got a real problem and you need somebody to talk to, give me a call.
Okay. And once again, how do people get a hold of you? Is it DottieThePsychic.com? Is that where people should go?
DottieThePsychic.com. And I'm also on Facebook is a really good way to get a hold of me. I think you can actually Google me and find my phone number.
That's always the best, right? Just to Google somebody.
Just Google. That's honest to God how I get a lot of my business. Like, I started showing up in the Google search for local psychics here in West Virginia, and that's how I started getting a lot of my personal clientele.
Okay. So now when I know we talked a little bit about this, but in case people who haven't heard, um, is there, does everyone have this gift? But when did you know that you had it? Those two questions there.
Okay, so I know that there are some people who are kind of elitist about this. I feel like you're looking up my nose. Here, let's try that.
No, not at all.
No. It's a
You're all
fabulous
right.
nose. It's a little off kilter like the
You're all
rest of
right.
me, but
You're totally cool.
honest to God, I think everybody has a touch of it. I think that's part of how we build is through empathy. Everybody has some basic sense of empathy, and I think that the psychic connection is just an extension of that. There are people who don't practice it the way I do. There's a lot of people who are naturally intuitive that do not get into the psychic world. You find a lot of them in like healthcare fields and other, compassionate fields, I guess is a good way to put it. Places where they're going to be working with people who are in situations.
Helping people.
Yeah. Well, just any kind of helping people. Even your accountant may be a psychic. Who knows? Like,
Right.
that's natural intuitive ability. Actually, I know plenty of people who don't believe in any of this stuff who still have like this ability to call when you feel down. Like, you got that one friend who's like maybe not into all this stuff, but somehow they still know to just come over.
They just
when
show
you're,
up.
They just show up. That was a big one. Like when I realized people would just like, there's a few friends where I will just show up at their house when something's wrong. I'm like, oh, I feel like giving so-and-so a call. I'm not even like, I bet something's wrong. Like I have that impulse to call them before I'm like, logically, the last 3 times I've called them, they've been in turmoil. So I'll just call them.
Uh-huh. I got you. Now, would you say that is intuition, or if someone has like ESP or something like that, does that mean that they have the ability to just haven't fine-tuned it like you have?
Yeah. And I think people feel out the world. So just because they don't have the vocabulary to describe what's going on doesn't mean they haven't incorporated it in their life and even developed it. English hard.
Developed it. Right. I got you.
Yeah.
No problem. When was that one time where you knew for sure, like, okay, this is something that I possess. It's a talent. It's a gift, whatever it may be. Maybe it's not a gift. I don't know. But when you knew that you had it and that you could help people with it and you could, give people information that they might not know, when did you know?
Here's the thing. Like, honestly, it's been kind of a draw. So there's no one single lightning strike moment. There is a series of lightning strike moments, like, because it's not just being tapped into the wavelength. When you get tapped into, you're tapped into all of reality. So I've seen things like owls in the daylight. I know somebody's gonna die, and that was told to me by my dad. So I was kind of just learned it as I went. So there's no before I knew I was psychic, because it just sort of was part of who I am. And like I said, at one point I was told, and I started playing with the cards and they started coming up right. And still today, even when I'm like, I am doing this as a profession, I know it works because I have done it so many times, but I'll go to read somebody and I will lay their life out like a cheap novel and shock myself. It still happens. I'll be like, didn't see that one coming, but here we are.
Wow.
Dottie the Psychic, should have seen it coming.
Wow. So, man, I would think that every day is like an adventure for you. I mean, you don't know what's going to, even though you're a psychic, but you don't know what's going to come up or who you're going to run into or who you're going to read for and what's going to happen. It's got to be a very interesting and surprising at times. It's somewhat terrifying. Okay. Yeah. Tell me about what this life is like.
Somewhat terrifying.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a little bit, but that's kind of life I live anyway. With the whole neurodivergency, I wake up, I'm like, okay, what are we going to do today? We're figure it out as we go. That's basically how I live my life. Is like, okay, there are things I plan for and I try for and I work for and I put out into the universe, do the work to make them happen. And then they come in and it's still a shock. It's always like, okay, well, we're on this trip. I don't know what we're going to see, but we're going to find something. It's like a
Yeah.
magic carpet ride. You ever heard the song, the Steppenwolf's Magic Carpet
Yeah.
Ride?
Yeah.
That's my life. I'm just going to go.
Hey, can you tell me a couple things that I'm sure the listeners will love this? A couple readings. Of course, we don't have to name names or anything like that, but a couple readings or someone that you were working with and just something that was so out of this
Shocking.
world, shocking that we would never. I love hearing these stories. I'm sure everyone else does
Okay.
too.
Yeah, no, I've got a few.
I
I've
would
got a
think you
few.
do, Dottie, Psychic Dottie.
So this has actually happened multiple times, especially at the bar, because I do not give medical advice on the hotline. There's a certain level of liability. I would never give anyone advice that I'm not legally allowed to do.
Okay.
But I do, in my own personal deck, have a card that tells me there's some medical problem and you need to talk to the doctor. And that's exactly what I say. And I've pulled that card. I'll never forget. It was New Year's at the bar back in Jackson County, an eon ago now, it feels like. And I'm like, I'm bored. I'm sitting here, like, I thought, okay, it's New Year's. People are going to want readings. Nobody sits down. This drunk couple that are very much couldn't care less what I was doing. But I'm like, hey, sit down at my table. Would you like a reading? The guy's like, sure, read hers first. And like, they're not paying a bit of attention to me. I pulled the first two cards, didn't listen. I pulled the third one, and it's the caduceus. It's the medical symbol. I'll see if I can find it quick. But I set it down. I'm like, have you been to the doctor lately? And she looks at me and just like screams almost. I have brain cancer. I've got 6 months to live. And I'm like,
oh my God.
It took me a minute to respond because that's not something you expect. Everybody sits down for a card. A lot of people sit down to a card reading for a good time.
Yeah.
And it can be a lot of fun, especially if things are going well. And, I get some good advice. But when you sit down and that happens,
yeah,
even the psychic's going to be taken aback. I don't care how often you've done this. And that sort of thing has happened multiple times. It still takes me back. And I couldn't give her false hope because I didn't see things getting better, which is sad. But instead, she's like, could you do a reading on my kids? And so I did a reading on how her kids were going to be able to adjust without her. And that brought her some peace.
Okay.
Which is ultimately kind of what I want to do to the world. Just bring a little joy and peace to the world is,
Yeah.
So it was, that was a tough one, but
yeah.
Let's see. You want to hear another?
Yeah, I do.
Another good story. A lot of my good stories, like just actually a few, like a week ago. Like sometimes it's not just because the thing is I use the cards, but they're only simply a tool. They're a simple reflection. So sometimes the whole world will give me a prediction rather than just the cards. Like, and the more I do this, the more I work on my third eye, the more I hone it to do this as a profession, the more the world kind of just clues me in and the less I need actual tools to do it. And I got a call from a headhunter for nurses because I used to be an LPN. I'm like, and I had to admit to this woman on the phone that I had burnt out and that there was no way I would ever be able to work as a nurse again. 30 minutes later, I get a call on the hotline, which is Keen, if anybody wants to check me out on Keen. And this woman is just basically repeating back to me my life story. I'm like, oh my God, she's exactly where I was 5 years ago.
Wow.
And it was one of these moments, like I was like, what I wanted to hear when I was in that space. What would I have needed to know then that I know now? And I'm like, so that's what and that's the kind of reading I gave her. I'm like, look, this is the low point. this is as bad as it gets, and things will get better. It's going to take work. I'm not promising you an easy ride. Nobody gets an easy ride.
No, certainly not.
But things will get better, and you'll find peace and happiness. You just have to go, and the life you're living in is collapsing. It's time to move.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, Mr. Producer, we got any instant feedback for Psychic Dottie?
Yes, we have a ton. We
We
have
got a ton.
Justin from Virginia wrote in, what is scary? Oh, sorry, was it scary when you first realized you had this ability?
Honestly, because like I said, it's such an ingrained part of me. Like,
Yeah.
my dad was a spiritual person. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you what. I want to tell this about my dad. Oh, I got to give a shout out for my buddy before the show's over.
Okay, go ahead.
But my dad, when I was young, I saw a lot of spirits in the room, and having no context for it, having no real study of it, it freaked me out. So I would, I was told about in the last episode, seeing the doppelganger of my sister.
Yeah.
So I managed to work up the courage to go run into the living room and tell my dad. And he's like, well, we're going to take care of this. So he gets me a Bowie knife. Like, he used to sell swords, so we were raised around knives. So he gets me a Bowie knife, and it was probably a foot long.
Oh my
And he
God.
says, okay, you go in first, and I'm going to follow you with the gun in case there was something really
Oh my
in there.
God. Wow.
You know what, though? That taught me two things. Number one, my dad believed me.
Yeah.
He trusted me to tell him the truth as
And
I
he's
saw
got you.
it.
He's got your back too.
Right. And he also taught me to stand my ground.
Yeah.
And those are lessons I have carried with me my entire life. And like, what an epic way to handle that situation, though.
No doubt.
And I'm like, later on, I'm like, Dad, what were you thinking? Like, I just want to know. I'm not disagreeing with the choice you made. I think it was epic, but I just want to know the thought process behind it. He's like, well, how do you handle an illogical situation logically?
What a good dude.
Okay. Yeah. He
We
was
got to
a-
meet that guy. Yeah, he's cool.
he passed away a while ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry to
Yeah.
hear that. Sorry to hear that.
I was sad too, but but he left like he was a weird little holy man. Like he's where I get my gift the gab from. He wasn't real particularly tall, but he always dressed well, and he always he'd play matchmaker, and he was always down to talk. We used to crack jokes about him sunburning his tongue. But
Well, thanks for sharing that. That sounds like something that you've kept very special, and you've kept it with you as you should. Mr.
Right.
Producer, what who else we got for Psychic Dottie?
We have Thomas from Maine, and he wrote in, did you have friends or mentors that helped you cultivate your craft?
honestly, my mom and dad really did, because one thing about school was very isolating. It was rough in school. And I've had many mentors, people to talk to. I'm working with a guy now who's helping me on the business, but really like my core spirituality. If everything else I've studied, I always go back to what my mom and dad taught me, because they taught me to be honest and be kind and not to worry about too much of the rest. You got to be honest and kind with yourself and honest and kind with other people. And that's a very complicated lesson put very simply. And they also, just like the story with Dad and the Bowie knife, they never made me feel crazy. They never made it feel like I was just making this up.
Or there was something wrong with you. They never said anything
Right.
like that, right? That's supportive, and that's very loving, I believe. But
Yeah, I mean, it was very well handled. My parents were very loving, good people.
yeah,
And-
sound like it.
Yeah, I just lost my mom back in August.
Oh man.
So I'm kind of like, I'm making a real part of the reason I'm doing this show is because I'm like, okay, mom left me some money. I'm like, okay, I'm going to use it to advertise, because she really, really supported me trying to make this a real thing.
Get it out there.
Yeah. So like they supported me my whole life, and Mom and I could have like candid conversations about spirits because we'd both been nurses. We both knew we had a gift. So we could be like, we could have those real conversations where we're like, so, we get big family news. Like, how do we feel about this? Do we think it's actually going to happen, or do we think something's going to happen? Those sort of conversations. Or if she saw something that scared her, or she had a dream that was, because my mother had prophetic dreams. Like she had a prophetic dream about my grandmother dying and one about my brother dying.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Like she had the prophetic, because my brother died in 2019 and he was the youngest of us. But she'd had a dream when she was pregnant with him about being in a car wreck. And then for like 2 months before he died, she had the same dream. And it was horrifically detailed. Like it was her dying. She thought that's how she was going to die. She thought, it was that cyclopic vision. Like, okay, this is how I'm going out. Because she had it and it was so vivid and real to her. Wow. And then after Ruben, my brother, died, she stopped having the dream.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, knowing something's going to happen and changing it are two different things.
Jeez. Wow, that's incredible. Thanks for your honesty. It's wow. Mr. Producer, what other questions you got?
I apologize. We have Lola from New Jersey, and they wrote in, what do you enjoy most about helping others?
I think it's the spark in people's eyes. Like, it's so funny because I will watch people come in and they'll have this skeptical look, and then I shock them and they're like super focused on what I'm doing. And I think that's great. Especially when that leads to them improving their lives. I'm like, okay, this person is better off for having met me. And that is a good feeling. But also, like, I can't tell you, I don't know if it's just me. I don't think it is, because a lot of psychics run into a whole lot of women who are trying to talk themselves into leaving abusive relationships.
Oh.
It happens a lot because, they need that one more sign. They just want to make sure they're real clear about what they're doing. And giving these women permission to leave bad situations, and it's men too. I say women, but I've had a few men. It doesn't seem to happen as much because they're usually, it's just a change of mentality. But giving people that permission to improve their lives is probably the most rewarding part of my job.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey guys, I've been speaking with Psychic Dottie. Psychic Dottie, can you
Dottie the Psychic.
Dottie the Psychic. Can you tell us once again how to get a hold of you, and if there's anything that you want to leave us with? You have the floor, my friend.
Okay, you can reach me through DottieThePsychic.com. I have a Patreon page, Facebook. Definitely check out the YouTube if you're into YouTube. I want to give one shout out. So I got a buddy, Rob Wilson. We actually met in a very weird place. Like, he was part of my divorce story, and we met in kind of a dark place. And he has worked so hard, and he's one of these people who has defined himself by the people that love him and the hearts he's changed. So I just want to give him a shout out and wish him well. And I hope he gets that new job. So
nice.
Everybody wish Rob good luck. All
right, Rob, good luck. And Dottie the Psychic, it's a pleasure. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say next. One more time, how do people get a hold of you?
DottieThePsychic.com. Safe travel and much profit to you.
Happy New Year, my friend. We'll talk again.
Happy New Year.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me. What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.